I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to find herself in the middle of a secret that could destroy a marriage, not mine, not even close. But when my husband's boss pulled me aside at a company event, his words left me completely shaken. I remember the way he looked at me, not in a creepy way, not exactly, but like he knew something I didn't. Something I wasn't supposed to find out. At first, I thought he was just being polite, maybe making small talk while my husband was busy chatting with a few coworkers. But then he said something that made my stomach twist, something I still can't forget. And from that moment on, everything started to unravel. Let me back up a little. My name is Claire, and I've been married to Josh for almost 8 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall, things were good. Or at least, I thought they were. Josh works in finance, and about a year ago, he got promoted to a management position at his firm. That's when he started working under Darren, the kind of boss people either admire or quietly avoid. Darren is charming, successful, always dressed sharp, and somehow seems to know everything about everyone. The type of man who has presence the moment he walks into a room. I didn't know much about him personally, but Josh talked about him often. Said he was intense but fair, and that he expected a lot from his team. I only met Darren once before this particular night. It was a holiday party the firm hosted at a fancy hotel downtown. Everything looked picture perfect, twinkling lights, soft music, laughter echoing around the room. I remember feeling a little out of place among all the polished executives and their designer-dressed spouses, but I smiled and played the part. Josh introduced me to a few of his co-workers, and eventually, Darren came over and said hello. He was polite, asked about my job, complimented my dress, nothing unusual. But he had this way of holding eye contact just a second too long. I didn't think much of it at the time. In fact, I barely thought about it at all. Until a few weeks ago. It was another company event, this time a small dinner party at Darren's home. Josh insisted I come, it would be good for his image, he said. I agreed, not wanting to seem unsupportive. The house was beautiful, the kind you see in magazines, and Darren played the perfect host. He and his wife seemed like a well-matched pair, attractive, successful, and completely in sync. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. As the night went on, people broke off into smaller conversations. Josh got pulled into a discussion about a new client, and I found myself alone for a few minutes. That's when Darren approached me again. He offered me a drink, and we started talking, nothing deep at first. Just casual stuff. But then, out of nowhere, he leaned in a little closer and said, "Can I tell you something? Off the record?" I laughed awkwardly, unsure of where this was going, but nodded anyway. What he said next made my heart stop. It was the kind of thing that instantly makes your mind spin, makes you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. He wasn't being aggressive. His voice was calm, even friendly. But there was something in his tone that felt like a warning, or maybe a test. I couldn't quite tell if he was trying to protect me, or stir something up on purpose. All I knew was that the words he whispered changed everything. In that moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't walk away from. I wanted to ask questions, demand answers, but I was frozen. The room kept spinning around us, full of laughter and clinking glasses, but I couldn't hear any of it. Just Darren's voice, and the weight of what he'd just said. I looked around for Josh, but I couldn't find him. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. Not until I figured out whether what I'd just heard was the truth, or a very dangerous lie. Because if it was true, nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. I stood there for a few seconds, still holding the untouched drink Darren had handed me. His words echoed in my head, but I couldn't process them all at once. He hadn't said it in a dramatic way, it was almost like he was just stating a fact. Calm. I remember the exact words, but I don't even want to repeat them yet. Not because I'm scared of the truth, but because part of me still doesn't believe it. Or maybe I just don't want to believe it. I smiled politely, the way you do when you're trying not to let anyone know something's wrong, and I excused myself to the bathroom. Once I shut the door behind me, I locked it and just stood there staring at myself in the mirror. I kept thinking, why would he tell me that? Why now? Was it his way of warning me? Or was he trying to start something? And what did he even gain by dropping that kind of bomb on me in the middle of a party? I splashed cold water on my face and tried to collect myself. I couldn't fall apart, not here. Not while everyone else was out there smiling and drinking wine and pretending like their lives were perfect. I had to act normal. Or at least look like I was. When I finally stepped out, I spotted Josh across the room, laughing with one of his colleagues. I watched him for a few seconds, trying to see if there was anything off. But he looked completely relaxed, like a man without secrets. That only made me feel worse. The ride home was quiet. I didn't say anything about what Darren told me. I wanted to, I almost did, twice, but something told me to wait. I needed time to think. To figure out what I even believed. Josh talked about the evening, how Darren's house was even nicer than he expected, how he thought things were going well for his career. He seemed genuinely excited, proud even. That made the knot in my stomach tighten. Could someone really pretend that well? Or was Darren lying to stir up drama? Over the next few days, I tried to piece things together. I replayed every recent conversation, every strange moment between Josh and Darren. I thought back to the late nights Josh had started pulling over the last few months. He always blamed work. I never questioned it before. But now? Now I noticed everything. Every time he picked up his phone and stepped into another room. Every time he changed his password or stayed late without texting. It was like suddenly I had a filter over my life, one that made everything look suspicious. And then there was Darren. I couldn't figure him out. Why would a man with that much power, at work, at home, feel the need to get involved in someone else's marriage? Unless it was personal. Unless it was revenge. Or guilt. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like he wasn't just telling me for the sake of telling me. He had a reason. I just didn't know what it was yet. I started doing something I never imagined I would, snooping. Checking Josh's pockets when I did laundry. Watching his expressions when he got texts late at night. Looking for patterns. I even scrolled through old photos on his phone while he was in the shower. I wasn't proud of it, but I couldn't help myself. Every time I saw him smile at me, or ask how my day was, I wanted to scream, just tell me the truth. But the thing is, I still didn't even know what the truth was. All I had were words whispered in private, from a man who had no reason to protect me, but every reason to manipulate. And the worst part? I was starting to feel like I was the one going crazy. Because once someone plants a seed of doubt in your mind, especially someone close to your husband, nothing feels real anymore. The following week felt like walking through fog. Everything around me looked the same, our house, our routine, the way Josh kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work, but nothing felt the same. My mind kept circling back to Darren's words, and no matter how hard I tried to push them away, they clung to me like a shadow. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding or some kind of twisted office politics, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Josh had always been good at keeping things close to his chest. He never overshared, especially when it came to work. At first, I admired that about him, his focus, his discipline. But now, that same quietness felt like a wall I couldn't get past. And every time I tried to gently bring up Darren or the dinner party, Josh would change the subject. He didn't even ask me what I thought of the night. That silence alone was loud enough to make me uneasy. Then there was Darren's wife, Elena. I hadn't paid much attention to her before, but after that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. She seemed elegant, calm, almost too perfect. But something about the way she watched people, how her eyes lingered just a second longer than necessary, it made me wonder if she was hiding something too. What if she knew what Darren told me? What if she wanted me to know? That's when a new thought hit me. What if it wasn't about Josh at all? What if Darren was using me to get to him? Office rivalry? Personal jealousy? Maybe Josh had done something unknowingly that threatened Darren's position or ego, and now this was his twisted way of getting back. Or, maybe Darren was telling the truth, and this wasn't about work at all. Maybe it was personal. Maybe Josh was involved in something I had no idea about. I found myself looking through our shared calendar one evening, noticing a few late meetings Josh never mentioned. They were blocked out vaguely, just client call or strategy session. I asked about one of them casually, and he answered too quickly, like he was ready for the question before I even finished it. That wasn't like him. He used to ramble about work, about difficult clients or new accounts. Lately, it was all surface-level talk, like he was walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, Darren texted me once. Just once. "Hope you're okay," it said. No context. No name. But I knew it was him. I didn't reply. And yet, I couldn't delete it either. A few nights later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed Josh. He said he was heading to a networking event downtown, another one of those vague, polished-sounding excuses I was starting to question more and more. He dressed sharp, sprayed that cologne he only used on special occasions, and left with a kiss on my cheek like everything was fine. But something inside me said this wasn't just work. I waited 20 minutes, grabbed my keys, and drove out. I didn't even know what I was looking for exactly. Proof? A face? A lie standing in plain sight? My hands were shaking on the wheel the whole time. I felt ridiculous and scared and strangely certain all at once. When I pulled into the parking lot of the hotel Josh said he was going to, I stayed in the car. I scanned the entrance, watching the doors like something out of a movie. 10 minutes went by. Then 20. I was about to give up when I saw him. But he wasn't alone. Josh walked out with a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, elegant, and laughing at something he said. They weren't holding hands, but they were close. Too close. The way he looked at her made my stomach twist. It was the look he used to give me. They stood there for a moment before walking toward the valet stand, and I ducked down just enough to avoid being seen. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out every other sound. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, as I watched them leave together in a car I didn't recognize. Not our car. Not hers. Rented, maybe. Or borrowed. That's when everything Darren said came crashing back in full force. He knew. He knew all along. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or confront Josh right then and there. But I did know one thing, whatever I was about to uncover, it wasn't just about infidelity. It was bigger. Darker. More deliberate. And now I was right in the middle of it. The next morning, I could barely look at Josh. He came home late the night before, claiming the event went long, traffic was terrible, and his phone had died. He said it so casually, almost annoyed, like I was the one being unreasonable. I just nodded and pretended to believe him. But inside, I was boiling. I had seen him. I had seen her. And now he was lying to my face. I thought that was the worst of it. But I was wrong. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. The voice on the other end was quiet, hesitant. "Claire," she said. I don't know how else to do this, but I think you deserve to know the truth. I'm not calling to hurt you." There was a long pause. "I'm the woman your husband's been seeing." My chest tightened. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She continued, explaining that she met Josh through Darren. That they had started talking casually at first, at some company function, and things escalated from there. But what shocked me most wasn't that Josh had been unfaithful. It was what she said next. He told me his marriage was just for appearances. That it helped him stay in Darren's good graces. That Darren only promoted married men. Said his wife, you, was part of the image, not the reality. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. This wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated. Manipulative. Strategic. Darren hadn't just known about the affair, he had helped create it. Or at the very least, allowed it to happen for his own reasons. Now I was caught between two men with secrets, one of them my husband, and the other, his powerful boss who somehow still hadn't said everything. That night, I finally confronted Josh. I waited until after dinner, when there was no more pretending. I told him everything, what I saw, what I heard, and who called me. At first, he denied it. Swore I was being paranoid. But when I mentioned Darren, his whole face changed. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. That's when he finally admitted the truth. Yes, there was another woman. Yes, Darren knew. But what I didn't expect was what came next. Josh said Darren had set him up. That it all started when Darren made subtle comments, pushing him into the affair, telling him it would help his future and keep his position secure. He claimed Darren even introduced them, knowing exactly what he was doing. Josh looked broken, but I didn't know if I believed his regret or just his fear of losing everything. He begged me not to leave, said it was never real, that he still loved me. But how could I believe anything now? I thought that was it, the end of the lies. But the real twist came 2 days later when I got a message from Elena, Darren's wife. She wrote, I know what my husband did. You're not the only one he's manipulated. He's been using people like pieces on a chessboard. But I've gathered proof. I want to bring him down. Together. I stared at her message, heart pounding. The story I thought was about infidelity was really about power. Control. And revenge. And now, the woman I once saw as untouchable was offering me a choice, walk away from it all, or step into the fire and expose the truth. Either way, nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. I met with Elena the next day in a quiet cafe away from the city. She looked different without the perfect makeup and polished smile, more human, more real. She handed me a small flash drive and said, everything's on there. Emails, recordings, even video. He's done this before. We weren't the first. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about a pattern of manipulation, hidden behind power and charm. Darren had used his influence to play with people's lives, mine, Josh's, even Elena's, and no one had ever called him out. With Elena's evidence, I made a decision. I contacted HR at Josh's company not to protect him, but to bring Darren's actions into the light. It wasn't easy, and it stirred up more drama than I imagined, but it felt right. There were internal investigations, quiet whispers, and eventually, both Darren and Josh were asked to leave the firm. Quietly, of course, companies like that don't like public messes. As for me, I walked away from the marriage. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. I realized that trust, once broken this deeply, is hard to rebuild. And I didn't want to spend my life with someone who only told the truth when he was cornered. Looking back, I never would have expected my husband's boss to be the one who cracked open the truth. But sometimes, the most unbelievable moments are the ones that set you free. And in the end, I found something more valuable than answers. I found myself. 7.